how does a country with this many people, now this many resources, not just unable to perform and like produce athletes? Like, why is that the case? And I guess that's kind of what we're delving into, starting off with football today.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon? Like, what's from what you found out, what kind of went wrong? Because I know one thing, even in the movie that they shown, corruption, the division between states, like
Yeah,
all
that
of
was a
that,
big
those
one.
themes carry across India, like in their day-to-day lives, but especially in sport, because people are so passionate about it. Like even in that movie, there was a media mogul that wanted West Bengali players ahead of everyone else,
Yeah.
which having lived in India for a bit, like I saw, I experienced firsthand how those divisions can like play out. So it's no surprise in that. But is there anything else that you think like kind of contributed to that?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing is, well, let's start with the positives. The positives is that we've got the ISL, the
Yeah,
Indian Super League. So it's great that we have our own domestic competition. I think that's really good. And obviously, we've talked about it before, but remember we like spoke about all the legends, all the Prem legends that obviously way over the hill, but that played in India,
yeah,
like
yeah.
Del
Got the
Piero,
list here. Yeah,
Robert Perez, David James, David Trezeguet. So basically, they'd actually gone to India for a reason. Of course, it was
of
probably,
course, yeah,
let's
yeah.
be honest, for a paycheck
Of course,
at the
yeah,
end.
yeah.
But the
But
fact they even came is a start. But
there's
then,
got to be an offer there because, like, so you said it's a good thing, and it is that we got our own professional league, but they were really late to adopt professional
yeah.
football.
So now
That
this
happened in
is
2014.
so this is my point
Yeah,
is that, for example, like other countries that are trying to grow, whether call it football, soccer, whatever, like the US or Canada, okay, they've got a league, they've made marquee signings,
yeah,
but this is the main difference is that you can't just make marquee signings. Yes, that's good because it increases the popularity of the sport,
yeah.
but that doesn't increase youth development or your pathway into the league,
Mm.
which is basically where the real key is.
Yeah,
So I've started off that actually getting marquee names is a good thing because it gets more
for
people
sure. Yeah,
into the sport. However, where the real problem is that there's no pathway or ladder
yeah,
for players to go into the professional game. Therefore, you should really have, like, as we call it, Sunday league, but like a regional league. Then probably if you're good enough for the regional, go into like a state league, and then all the states play each other in like a national tournament.
yeah,
And then that's where you really get a network of games where the good players shine. All of a sudden, they should be then channeled into like the India youth teams, right? That you can see that kind of network working.
yeah,
But when there's no network, it means one, people don't see it as a viable career. Two, coaches don't even see it as a viable career because they have little incentive to train these people. Why shouldn't they go abroad or even pursue another career if none of that foundation's
yeah,
laid
yeah.
down? So I think starting with a domestic league is good. Um, and I know that Real Madrid, Barca used to have academies, like 30 academies in India, and Real Madrid have just taken them over. But even that is so good because you're getting foreign coaches in. But at the end of the day, they're really just going to be handpicked to go abroad. They're
Yeah.
not actually going to be, they're like a short term solution to like develop and find good Indian talent. But that's not really going to be a
And
huge funnel
for sure,
to
for
the
sure.
league.
I think it's like that sounds like a niche program which probably benefits the clubs that are doing it more than
More
the
than it,
actual
yeah.
infrastructure itself. And I think, as you said, the pathways thing was very interesting because I think that's the work that should have happened off the back of the Asian Games win in the '60s. Like a lot of this work of like establishing a professional league, having those, having the game be promoted across the country, having like a uniform structure of how people come into making a career of themselves.
Yeah. And scouting, sorry, obviously always comes in. Talent
All of that. Yeah,
identification
yeah, yeah,
obviously comes into something, but you need a pathway to go into
yeah.
for the people
Exactly,
to ID talent.
exactly.
Um,
So yeah, it's no like it's not that India can't produce it. It's there. Like just by statistics, you can see anywhere with like even a 10% of the number of people that India has, there's going to be ridiculous football talent there.
yeah, well,
It's just
look
about
at
the
Croatia for
yeah.
example. Like
It doesn't
how
matter.
well they've been like what top four in the last
Exactly.
couple of
You don't
Euros
need
and
that many people. Yeah.
finals, and I think the main thing is that when we talk about like, okay, we want foreigners or other players to come and play in the Indian Super League, it's not because they're actually foreign. It's because of the quality.
Yeah.
Their quality is better, and why would you want to watch? I found out a really interesting stat actually, which was that, and it kind of like pushes the point home where actually, the World Cup final, Qatar 2022,
Yep.
France v Argentina, that actually had a higher viewership in India than the World Cup India just beat Australia in, which I didn't know in
Really?
India. Yeah,
What, the T20
yeah,
Cricket World Cup?
T20.
I
And
would not have guessed that. That's
and I
crazy.
didn't know, and I was wondering why. But one, obviously, football's a global game,
Yeah.
and two, I think a major difference is obviously we can speak about cricket later. But for example, if we just talk about the IPL, why do people watch it? Because of the quality of people
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
So if I had 2 hours to spare to watch an Indian ISL league game or watch a Premier League game, no one's going to watch the I League game or ISL game unless you're actually really invested in that
For
club,
sure,
right?
for sure.
You may flip across channels, but really you just want to watch the Premier
And
League
like
game.
that links in well with like the culture because professional football was adopted in 2014. Like they had to use a franchise model. So like say you're like a young fan looking to get into football, you've got, and like in India obviously, you've got your own home league which has 13 teams now that only plays from November to March.
Yeah.
Only plays 24 games in a season. Is a bit of a shambles if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
like
compared
in terms
to Prem's 38,
of course, yeah.
and then Championship
And
play even more. I think that
for sure, and
okay.
it's not even like this isn't a dig at the players by any means. It's exactly the fact that there's not been any like effort over the last 50 years to establish this. This should be there, but it's not on the players that the quality is not there. The players are the best the country can produce, and they should be lauded for that. But if you're a fan, it's fair enough that you look to Europe, you look to South America maybe to look at the best quality football, because why would you not? You want to see the best play. Also, it's a franchise model, right? People in the UK, well, in Europe and South America, fall in love with clubs. Like a great example I always think of with Indian sports culture in general, they fall in love with players because of cricket and the IPL. And if their player moves from one team to another, chances are they'll go to that other team. Whereas in football, which was
in the player,
for football, like which I had to learn after I moved here, you fall in love with a club and you don't change that club. No matter what happens, you'll kind of ride or die. And that's the culture, which obviously in 10 years of professional football is not going to have happened, especially in a league where the first 10 founding teams couldn't get relegated. The jeopardy, the journey that football fans go on just isn't there.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, so I think I completely get why that, actually now having said all that, I get why the viewership was better for the World Cup final.
Yeah.